Welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar on building your area's tech workforce with registered apprenticeship. My name is Katie Adams. I am pleased to be joined by some national leaders in workforce and apprenticeship and to be able to share information with the workforce system about the Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeships National Cybersecurity Sprint and the opportunity that presents for our workforce system. Today's panelists, I'm very pleased to be joined by three national leaders in the field. Baird, Deputy Administrator for the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship. Manny, Senior Advisor at the U.S. Department of Labor Employment and Training Administration. And Melissa Robbins, CEO with the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. My name is Katie Adams. Again, I'm Senior Director at Safal Partners. We have the pleasure of being a U.S. Department of Labor National Industry Intermediary focused on expanding registered apprenticeship for cybersecurity and tech occupations across industries nationwide. In today's session, we're going to hear first from Baird about the National Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Sprint, a quick overview and the goals of the sprint, and why right now it's a timely initiative of the department to advance apprenticeship in this critical sector. Melissa Robbins is going to be sharing with us about the apprenticeship knowledge gap that her association has identified some key areas for opportunities for growth that dovetail really well with the cybersecurity apprenticeship sprint. And Manny is going to share with us how apprenticeship can be utilized by local workforce boards towards alignment with WIOA and helping build stronger talent pipelines for employers and high growth career pathways for job seekers into roles that pay family supporting wages. I look forward to being able to share some resources for your local board that Safal Partners is able to provide as an industry intermediary. And then we'll wrap up with some more information that your staff and board can use in advancing apprenticeship. And so with that, Megan, I would love for you to get us started with a little bit of an overview about the cybersecurity apprenticeship sprint.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everybody. Happy to be joining you all today. So what is the National Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Sprint? This sprint is a national campaign to encourage employers, industry associations, labor unions, and training providers to explore registered apprenticeship as a recruitment, training, and retention strategy, as well as an opportunity to connect with the Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship to develop new apprenticeship programs or quickly join existing programs. And some of you may have also heard from the Biden administration that they are committed to improving skills-based pathways to cyber jobs. And these are good, well-paying jobs, as well as educating Americans so that they have the skills they need to thrive in our increasingly digital society and also improve diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the cyber field. So during a July 19th National Cyber Workforce and Education Summit that was hosted by the White House, the U.S. Department of Labor, in partnership with the Department of Commerce, the Department of Homeland Security, and other federal agencies, announced a 120-day cybersecurity apprenticeship sprint to help promote the registered apprenticeship model as a solution for numerous industries to develop and train a skilled and diverse cybersecurity workforce. And the goals of this sprint are to increase awareness of current successful cybersecurity-related registered apprenticeship programs, partnerships, and initiatives, and how they are helping industry educate and train a skilled cyber workforce to reduce cybersecurity risk. Another goal is to advance the diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility across cybersecurity occupations through registered apprenticeship, particularly for historically underrepresented populations such as women and communities of color. And another goal is to educate the public on the efforts of the Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship and activities that we are taking to help accelerate the process for employers to launch programs in as little as 48 hours if using existing industry vetted and Department of Labor approved standards. And another goal is to recruit employers to explore registered apprenticeship and partner with the Department of Labor and the Department of Commerce's National Initiative for Cybersecurity and Education to help meet critical cybersecurity workforce needs of the nation. And then our last goal is to connect career seekers to cybersecurity apprenticeship opportunities. Next slide. So what prompted the sprint? Some of you, if you have been watching the news, if you've been following the industry, you might be aware of the current demand for cybersecurity jobs. And it's important to note that cybersecurity cuts across all industries. It's not just a standalone industry. And that cybersecurity products and services, they are important. They protect our most critical assets. And that as a nation, we have to prepare, grow, and sustain a skilled and diverse cybersecurity workforce that safeguards and promotes America's national security and economic prosperity. However, there is a severe shortage of qualified cybersecurity workers, especially considering today's constantly changing and increasing cybersecurity needs. I'm sure you all have seen this from watching the news and seeing what's going on with various cyber hacks. And according to cyberseek.org, US employers listed over 700,000 job openings for cybersecurity job roles and skills over the past year. Almost 40% of those job postings were listed during the first 4 months of 2022. So that indicates that demand is speeding up as more public and private sector organizations look to strengthen defenses against a multitude of threats. And the demand for cybersecurity jobs increased by 43% in the 12-month period, compared to a nearly 18% increase in demand across the entire employment market. So the approximate 700,000 vacancies in cyber positions constitutes a national security risk, and we have to tackle it aggressively. And again, these are high-paying jobs that can improve the economy, secure our critical infrastructure, and advance our digital way of life. And any solution to the shortage of cyber talent must be inclusive of historically undertapped talent. So this includes underserved and marginalized communities. And it's not only a moral imperative, but also it's a strategic force multiplier. And a cybersecurity career should be within reach for any American who wishes to pursue it. And we will not be successful in filling this talent pipeline unless we are recruiting and supporting all American workers. And to open the career pipeline for those that a cyber career may be out of reach, we are also looking at new pathways to be created. And again, registered apprenticeship and other skill-based training and hiring practices enable inclusive outcomes and really give workers an opportunity to earn and learn at the same time, as well as keep the economy strong by creating a pipeline into good quality jobs. And in 2022, we had over 3,000 registered apprentices in cybersecurity related occupations, which is an increase of around 600% over the last 10 years. So there is obviously a huge industry demand. And for those reasons, we worked with our partners to launch the 120-day cybersecurity apprenticeship sprint. Next slide. And for those of you that might be new to apprenticeship, I'm going to preface this by saying apprenticeship.gov is a wonderful resource. If you've not been there, go visit there. There are some great fact sheets on what is registered apprenticeship. So I encourage you to check that out after today's presentation. But apprenticeship programs are distinguished from other types of workplace training models by several factors. The first being that apprenticeships are jobs. So apprentices are paid by their employer during the training. Apprenticeship programs also provide on-the-job learning and job-related classroom training. And the on-the-job learning component is conducted in the work setting under the direction of a mentor. And then lastly, apprenticeship results in a portable, nationally recognized credential for the apprentice. And the length of apprenticeship programs can vary depending on the employer, the complexity of the occupation, the industry, and the program type. So it has 5 core components that I just covered that are on the slide. But again, it is a flexible program that can be modified to fit the need of an employer and the occupation. Next slide. So what are the benefits of apprenticeship? By registering your program with the Department of Labor or a state apprenticeship agency, you can gain access to additional resources. So the first one is access to a nationwide network of expertise, customer service, and support at no charge. That is the role of the Office of Apprenticeship at the Department of Labor. That is the role of state apprenticeship agencies as well. We are a resource to anybody in the ecosystem that wants to engage in registered apprenticeship, and by extension as well, our industry intermediaries and our technical assistance of centers of excellence offer that support as well. You also, for employers, we have evidence that shows that registered apprenticeship has a positive return on investment. So for every dollar an employer invests, they are receiving a $1.47 return. And for employees as well, it is a reduced turnover cost. There is a 93% retention rate for apprentices with their employers who go through and complete a program. So if you talk to an employer, their general workforce retention is likely not at that 93% or even close to it. So it really is a strong retention tool. And then a registered apprenticeship also is an effective strategy to help diversify your workforce. If you are struggling as an employer with recruiting employees into your workforce, registered apprenticeship can be a strong tool to help you do that, as well as bring in new talent and talent that you may not have been able to acquire before. And then also registered apprenticeship opens up opportunities to access funding and other resources from federal programs. And then many states as well have tax credits that businesses can qualify for registered apprenticeship. And then lastly, another benefit is that the apprentice graduates with an industry recognized and nationally portable credential. And with that, I'm going to wrap up and turn it back over to Katie.
Thank you, Megan. It's exciting to hear about the growth in cybersecurity apprentices over the last even just handful of years. I know that the department has focused a lot of resources in helping employers understand and adopt this form of training for their IT and tech cyber connected roles. Thanks for that overview of the sprint and the goals of the department. Melissa, it would be a great opportunity now to connect what your organization has been learning about some of the current knowledge gap within the workforce system around apprenticeship, as well as the opportunity that you see for those frontline workers in our boards and American Job Centers to be able to connect both employers with apprenticeship as well as with job seekers. So Melissa, if you'd share a little bit about the apprenticeship knowledge gap and the opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all know registered apprenticeship is a proven model of, an earn and learn method. And we all know that the workforce system is a major component, and my personal favorite component of the economic engine. And so really NAWDP has just been focusing on how can we better align those two, and started working with Safal about a year ago now on identifying some of those gaps. And the first thing that we saw, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the first thing that we saw was a very, very low percentage of co-enrollment of registered apprenticeship and WIOA programs. And so just trying to kind of dig down into that and find out what opportunities there were for NAWDP to help move that needle. So if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to kind of talk about some of the information back one. Yep, there we go. Talk about some of the information. So we went ahead earlier this year and did a nationwide survey, and because we didn't want to rely on what we thought we knew. We wanted to make sure, the workforce system, everything is different post-COVID. So we wanted to make sure that we had an accurate representation of what was going on. And then there were just a lot of new professionals in the workforce system. And so what was the baseline knowledge of registered apprenticeship? And I think Megan covered those benefits really, really well. And so going beyond the benefits, what are the actual core components to doing registered apprenticeship? And what might a lack of knowledge in some of those core components be doing to keep those co-enrollment levels down? So we're going to highlight just a few of them. The first one 41% of those that we surveyed didn't know what registered apprenticeship programs existed in their local area or state. So just like we can't enroll somebody in a training program we don't know about, or match a job seeker with an open job order that we don't know about, we also can't enroll somebody in a registered apprenticeship program that we're not aware of. And so that improving awareness is going to be key. Again, part of why NAWDP is supporting this effort and this cybersecurity sprint is that awareness, making sure that the workforce system in its entirety understands what's going on and what's available out there. The next one, 35% did not understand the difference between registered apprenticeship and other work and learn models. And what that told us is it wasn't necessarily the component differences of what's different in a registered apprenticeship versus an on-the-job training or a work experience, but what are the different benefits of a registered apprenticeship program? And I think once we can communicate what the different benefits are of those programs, then the workforce system, the staff, the professionals that are doing this on a day-to-day basis can make the matches that best serve the businesses and those apprentices or job seekers that we're trying to put into those programs. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about a few things that go beyond awareness and benefits and go deeper into the working knowledge of the system, funding, compliance, and reporting. So probably not the most exciting things to talk about, but it really is the nuts and bolts, it's the in the weeds stuff that we need to move the needle on to get those co-enrollment numbers up and better align these two systems. So a couple of highlights that we found, from this survey is that a lot of the staff, and to go back a little bit, the survey, like I said, it was nationwide, but we made sure we had a good representation of frontline staff, of state staff, local board staff, partner staff, private industry staff. And so, again, we wanted a whole system picture, but 53% didn't understand the relationship between their eligible training provider list and the related instruction for apprenticeship programs. So, what happens if a registered apprenticeship related instruction isn't currently on your ETPL? Is that a problem? What do we do to fix that? How do we handle that? So again, this isn't a necessarily highlighting the lack of knowledge. For us, this is highlighting the opportunity and where we can do some technical assistance to help everyone understand how those interact and relate. 44% didn't understand how registered apprenticeship correlates with WIOA performance measures. And I think this is actually a pretty exciting one right now because in September, there was a proposed rule released to define the effectiveness in serving employers. And that proposed rule was on retention, right? Retention with the same employer in the second and the fourth quarters. I think this is huge for registered apprenticeship because that is one of the biggest benefits. Again, going back to what Megan said, 93% of those apprentices stay employed as full-time employees with that employer. So again, looking at what we can do to provide win-win situations for the businesses, the apprentice, the workforce system, I think that's a huge bonus, and we need to really talk about that going forward through that proposed rule on how registered apprenticeship correlates with WIOA performance. And then funding. So, funding is one of the things that you can have all of the parts of the system, everybody wants and knows what they want to do. How are we all going to pay for that? And I think that is one of the biggest proponents of working with the workforce system and aligning the partner knowledge in, we've talked about graded funding, but getting the best investment and the most effective investment for everyone that's involved. So understanding what programs can pay for what components of the registered apprenticeship system. Less than half of the respondents understood what their programs could pay for, or what other programs could pay for. So I think there's a huge opportunity there in, advancing some knowledge on how many different parts and pieces of this puzzle can we braid that funding and make it, again, a win-win situation for everybody. And then again, less than 44%, so 34% didn't understand how to use supportive services for apprentices, because that is one thing that is fairly unique about the workforce system. That's different than some other programs and investments out there, is we do have the ability for supportive services and be able to work with that apprentice and that business ongoing to make sure that it's a successful career path and a successful program for them. So those are the things that we just, again, dive down. And I don't want to highlight the lack of knowledge. What I want to highlight is the opportunities here, again, in ways that we can provide some assistance or provide some knowledge and move that needle forward on co-enrollment with registered apprenticeship in the workforce system. So I think on the next slide, we talk about where we're at currently and some of the different things that are available to you right now, that you can find tools, and then how we're going to continue to work on this going forward. So if you look at the Pearl data, so that is all of the workforce system, all of the numbers and the performance that is reported, all of that comes through, and less than 0.03% of all job seekers served through the workforce system are co-enrolled in registered apprenticeship. So tons of opportunity to increase that. Some of the things that you can do right now to look at the work that we've been doing, again, webinars and discussions like this. So, what Megan was saying, I think what Manny's going to follow up with on some of the WIOA stuff. We've been doing 30 minutes of excellence webinars. Everything that I'm listing here is free for everybody. You can access it through the Safal website, the link you can see there. You can also link to that website through NAWDP's website, but that's available to anybody. We do one of those 30 minutes of excellence sessions every month. It's a very quick lunch and learn type setup where we bring in some subject matter experts, and we take about 30 minutes just to talk about one particular component of registered apprenticeship, or just, again, some sort of technical component to give you a tool to go back and use. And we open that up if you have questions. So you want to request TA, you can do that through the website. You can do that through one of those 30 minutes of excellence sessions. We'll do a promising practice. That's one of those tongue twisters. Promising practice series that you'll have available to you. And then finally, we're really going to ramp up this assistance and awareness that we're doing. So we're going to actually do an apprenticeship boot camp at the upcoming NAWDP Youth Symposium. We'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we'll have a booth that's dedicated only to apprenticeship. We'll have a subject matter expert sitting there at all times, so you can come and ask your registered apprenticeship question. You can attend that boot camp. It's free for all of our youth symposium attendees, and then you'll be able to spend the next 2.5 days rounding that boot camp out with best practices from around the country. So again, we are very invested in supporting the work that everyone's doing and making sure that we can remove any barriers that there are to better alignment of registered apprenticeship and the workforce system. Katie, back to you.
Thank you, Melissa. I definitely want to highlight or underscore what you said about those knowledge gaps are really opportunities. And I think one of the things that we've seen through discussions and assessments and the national work that we've been doing through the cybersecurity sprint, as well as through the Center of Excellence work that you're leading, is that there is, as much as there are knowledge gaps, there's an eagerness to close those gaps. And I think that the Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Sprint represents a unique opportunity for workforce boards to really take a leadership role in their communities. And we know that every hospital, bank, retail outlet, school, local and state agency, as Megan pointed out, they have an increasing need for skilled IT and cyber workforce. Increasingly, they're realizing that they are at risk for ransomware threats, for just internal, attacks on services. And so for the ability for those workforce boards to serve employers by saying, we understand that you're in a unique position of trying to recruit for roles that you may have never really recruited for before. And you're finding stiff competition with, in some cases, private employment opportunities for people. And so apprenticeship offers a real opportunity for you to do some unique things. I know one of the promising practices that we have upcoming is an example of a school system in San Joaquin County, California, that actually created a youth apprenticeship program for IT services within the school system. So they decided to start engaging their own students as apprentices to address their tech and cyber challenges. So excited to see where that leads to the local systems efforts. So Manny, with that, Melissa teed you up well, set you up to be able to speak broadly to how well apprenticeship and WIOA align, and some opportunities for maybe some folks who are new in those business service rep roles to understand exactly how apprenticeship and WIOA align and what the opportunities are there for advancing some engagement with businesses in their communities through the cyber sprint.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. Appreciate it. And Melissa, Megan, thank you for the critical information that you shared. What I'll speak a little bit about is around the connection between apprenticeships and WIOA. I like to think apprenticeships and WIOA as close relatives. When they're really aligned, they're siblings, and where they're not so aligned, they're more like cousins. And the reason for that is because, and on the next slide, you'll see here that particularly when we think about an incident like a cybersecurity and tech apprenticeship, it really is a win-win for boards, job seekers, and employers to really fill those high growth, high demand jobs that pay a family sustaining wage. Particularly when we think about the incentives around this alignment, when I reference the kind of the close relative piece, it's particularly, you could even see it in the performance metrics. So for example, in WIOA, there's the 6 performance indicators. When you look at employment in Q2 and employment in Q4, knowing that 93% of apprentices stay on with an employer when they're done with their apprenticeships, and particularly as they complete their apprenticeship program, that in and of itself creates a close alignment as part of, if you're partnering with your apprenticeship programs, if workforce boards are partnering with the apprenticeship programs. Another example, median earnings in Q2, we know that the average starting salary for an apprentice is $77,000. So when you think about that continued alignment with the performance measures and the fact that apprentices over a lifetime earn $300,000 more than their non-apprentice, we know that that alignment with their earnings, there's a close alignment there as well. Of course, when we think about the measurable skills gains as part of a registered apprenticeship program, when you're developing a registered apprenticeship program, you're developing standards, whether it's time-based or a competency-based or hybrid apprenticeship program that is developed, the skills gains are integrated and embedded within your standards. So again, that creates a close alignment. And of course, as Megan referenced, when you complete a registered apprenticeship program, you earn a nationally recognized credential. And that's a connection to WIOA, where there's a credential attainment. Particularly in the tech space and the cybersecurity, you can have an interim credentials. So as part of developing your registered apprenticeship program, you can incorporate interim credentials through that development of the apprenticeship program as they seek to complete that nationally recognized credential. So that in and of itself incorporates and embed a WIOA performance indicator that's already embedded as part of the apprenticeship program. And of course, the final piece here on the connection to performance outcome is around effectiveness of serving employers. One of the number one things we say when we work closely with employers or when I worked on the workforce board and working with employers and developing apprenticeships as well, is that apprenticeship is industry driven. And so because it's industry driven, when you think about that effectiveness of serving employers, it's really about driving to the industry needs. And of course, as you think about cybersecurity and tech needs, every industry has those needs. And because apprenticeship itself is industry driven, it drives you towards that WIOA performance measure. Next slide. I'll just briefly speak to WIOA in terms of how resources could be leveraged, how WIOA can leverage resources to really support the development of pathways and the development of opportunities, particularly in cybersecurity and tech space, but of course, in broadly in other sectors as well, that is in a local area. So for example, one of the key things is that if you have a registered apprenticeship program that is registered with the U.S. Department of Labor or your state apprenticeship agency, it's automatically eligible for the ETPL list, which is the eligible training provider list. And so that ability that it's included on the ETPL list opens up opportunities such as ITAs, the individual training accounts, where you can leverage resources and funds towards tuitions, course fees, books, etc. Number two, when we think about WIOA and apprenticeship and how that connects to the various apprenticeship sprints and apprenticeship more broadly as well, the OJT contracts, I think one important thing to highlight is the fact that typically it covers up to 50% of apprentices' wage. And that again helps drive the connection to apprenticeships and WIOA. So if you think of really strategically leveraging WIOA to support and expand apprenticeships and vice versa, leveraging to ensure that apprentices are successful and as you develop apprenticeships, because we know that apprenticeships are jobs on day one. On day one, they're jobs. And so if you work with an employer, if I'm a business service rep working with an employer and I have a strong alignment with my apprenticeship team and within WIOA, you can leverage that resource to really support the apprenticeship and ensure that the partnership starts on day one. The final thing I'll highlight is just the supportive services connection. We know, over and over, one of the key important drivers of success for an apprenticeship program and apprentices, outside of the fact that their job on day one is supportive services. And this is where WIOA, and particularly if I'm a business services rep, you all know WIOA well, and you have those connections. And it would be super, important and critical to drive that connection to the apprenticeship as well, particularly around providing supportive services. So we know that WIOA, you can leverage WIOA to provide supportive services. So as you think more broadly about apprenticeship, it's that mentorships, it's that job on day one, but it's the related technical instruction. And as part of that, thinking strategically is around alignment with supportive services and ensure that apprentices, whether it's transportation and childcare, you can come in and work with, closely with apprenticeship to say, hey, we have these, resources and we can leverage on or at least help you think about how can you embed supportive services into Rio registered apprenticeship program and therefore drive the success of the apprenticeship program and then therefore be aligned to meet your outcomes as well. So with that, I'll pause and transition over back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Manny. That was terrific. I think, again, for business service reps and those employment specialists, working hand in hand to serve employers and in understanding, from a very practical level, how they can work with their workforce board staff to develop and to develop high quality apprenticeship programs that are really tapping into the strength of resources available through their local boards. And then for those employment specialists to be able to help employers expand their talent sourcing with folks that are going to be eligible for some of these funding streams for these supportive services. It's a win-win-win really for industry, the board, and the job seekers. And to your point, these things are not specific to the cybersecurity apprenticeship sprint, but the sprint offers a unique opportunity for the board to maybe approach some new employers that have these, again, perhaps new occupational needs or ongoing and projected growing occupational needs to better align some of their offerings with industry and use this opportunity to introduce industry to workforce and how relevant workforce is to the workforce system is to helping them solve their talent needs. So thank you. Well, I have the pleasure of being able to provide just a quick snapshot of some resources that Safal Partners is privileged to be able to provide for local workforce boards nationwide as a DOL industry intermediary. So Safal Partners was privileged to be designated as USDOL industry intermediary in 2020. We are focused, as I mentioned, on expanding apprenticeship in cyber and tech occupations. We are also a U.S. Department of Labor approved national apprenticeship program sponsor. And our role, all of our services are at no cost. Our role is really to, in this case, assist boards in equipping the board staff to understand how to best engage employers and provide a wealth of resources and knowledge, both within the workforce system and more broadly within the apprenticeship ecosystem. So we can support your board by first providing an option, a nationally approved sponsored registered apprenticeship program option that your local employers can join this week. We have just a handful of, we have several occupations that are here up on the screen under our program, and are adding new occupations as employers demand. It's a quick start way for employers to be able to join an existing apprenticeship program. We lay out the training plan for your employers, and then work with your employers to customize it to some of their specific needs. We also provide ongoing technical assistance and apprenticeship as subject matter expertise to support your employers. And that's whether they join our national program, or if your employers would like to register their own state-based program, either through the Department of Labor or their state apprenticeship agency. We are happy to help them work through that process and interface with the right folks in the state to get those programs approved and up and running. Regardless of whether an employer were to join our national program or we assist them in starting their own, we provide that ongoing technical assistance as well as ongoing technical assistance and training for business service reps within local boards, as well as customizable marketing material. We've done some great work with local workforce boards in Florida and in Texas, starting some work in California to provide both training as well as an online forum that you can invite employers to learn more about the cyber sprint and to learn more about our program and the services that we're able to provide them in conjunction with your board. We also provide industry-built credential mapped online training for that related instruction component of apprenticeship. That's an option that they can choose or not, depending on their current training needs. That industry-built online training is fully remote, accessible at any time, again, customizable to an employer's need, and the employer is able to, in real time, monitor their apprentices' performance and progress through their instruction. All of that instruction is aligned with multiple industry-valued credentials. So to Manny, to your point, those interim credentials during the program or upon program completion, your cyber and tech apprentices are going to complete their program with typically not just one, but multiple credentials, both the Department of Labor National Journey Worker Certificate, as well as industry valued credentials that set them up for success in whatever career path they continue to move along in the industry. And then we provide approximately $500 per apprentice in incentive funding. That funding goes directly to the participating employer and or program sponsor for specific costs related to program support and long-term sustainability. And again, all of our services are at no cost. To learn more about any of the topics that we addressed today, thank you, Megan, for reminding folks to go to apprenticeship.gov. It is your first and best place for one-stop information about apprenticeship, including a wealth of resources on workforce system alignment, WIOA alignment, as well as resources for your employers, for your staff, and specific resources and information on the Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Sprint. Thank you to Melissa for mentioning the 30 Minutes of Excellence webinars, as well as the additional suite of resources that NAWDP is developing and continuing to develop under its Center of Excellence work. The QR code here and the hyperlink is to NAWDP's 30 Minutes of Excellence webinar series. You can see previously recorded webinars. They're housed on that webpage, as well as the QR code will also take you to the upcoming webinars for registration. And I believe that we have a couple of webinar within the next week or two, specifically around workforce system alignment and alignment drivers. So things that your board can do to continually over time, align your work with apprenticeship, both for the Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Sprint and for other occupations and industries that are part of your state sector strategies and your WIOA planning. Lastly, cyber.safalpartners.com is our website as a Department of Labor industry intermediary. We would be pleased for you to learn more about our program and how we can support your board. I've included some information here. I want to thank everyone for their time. Thank you, Megan, Manny, Melissa. Thank you for the work that you're doing and getting the message out about how the workforce system and apprenticeship can work together as siblings, close siblings, to be able to serve both employers and job seekers, especially right now through the cybersecurity sprint, and making sure that our country is well defended and on solid digital platforms to be able to run our hospitals, our schools, our businesses, our military, and more. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment. And thank you to all of our attendees. We hope that you'll take advantage of these resources. Reach out, learn more about how we can serve your board in doing some one-on-one training and bring you into a cohort for training and for services to your local employers. Thank you again to each of you. And we thank you for all the service that your boards are doing there out in your local communities. We look forward to partnering with you.